Welcome everybody. I'm Hanneke Jonas from INSTOPP, and we are welcoming Richard and MJ on the call tonight. They are going to share a little bit about the MPI and answer some of the questions that you have raised. You are welcome to ask your questions in the chat section during the course of the call.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hanneke, for the opportunity to address the members. Rich, do you want to kick off with who Shackleton Risk Management is? And then I'll speak to who Genoa is. And straight after that, we can start getting into some commonly asked questions.
Thanks, MJ. Hi, everyone. Evening. Thanks for hopping on the court talk tonight. We'll try to keep it as brief our end as we can and open up the floor to all of you to ask questions that you have your side. To give some context about myself, my name is Richard Lynn. I'm the MD of Shackleton Risk Management, which is a countrywide surety and liability insurance brokerage firm. We place insurance products across a variety of markets, from the surety markets to liability insurance, such as medical practitioners on this call, attorneys, business rescue practitioners, financial service providers, and so on and so forth. We employ 75 people across the country, across 9 offices. We go for a much more personal business model when it comes to insurance, where we don't have a single client that is just kind of within, the kind of corporate machine. Every client is allocated to an in-house qualified broker who can advise you and who is your account manager. So it's quite a personal business as opposed to some of the other firms who offer similar products. We're part of a greater group of companies. We have 2 other major group companies. One is called Shackleton Life, where we do life insurance through Old Mutual. And then we have a different business called Shackleton Credit, where we buy non-performing loans from banks. The group was founded in 2002. So we're a very well-established company. We employ over 400 people across 11 offices in South Africa. My history is I'm a chartered accountant and a chartered financial analyst. I was previously at Ernst & Young in Johannesburg. I qualified as a chartered accountant, left there and joined Shackleton Risk, initially starting the business rescue and medical malpractice lines of business, and shortly after becoming the managing director of the firm. So that's some history on me and the group, and I'll hand over to MJ to talk about Genoa. I think in terms of a structure for tonight's talk, we'll go through a couple of frequently asked questions regarding medical malpractice insurance. I know some of them were highlighted on the invite. We've got a bunch of other frequently asked questions and things that we can go into after that. I know from some of our other big groups of clients, for example, CASA and some of those other big groups, we have used these sessions to allow it to be interactive for the audience. So MJ and myself will be presenting. If you want to ask questions as we go along, you can also type into the chat box, and whoever's not presenting will just type and respond that way, and we can also respond in terms of the actual presentation.
My name is Michael Demant. I'm a director of Genoa Underwriting Managers. Just painting a picture between the 2 companies that are on the call today. You have Richard, who's representing the brokerage, and I represent the underwriter. So the difference here is that Genoa is responsible for issuing the policy to you, handling your claims, and basically putting all of the cover together that you would enjoy under your MPI policy. I've been doing liability insurance, which for those of you who are not too familiar with insurance, that's professional indemnity for professionals. I've been doing it now for approximately 15 years, and it's a space that I understand incredibly well. Genoa work with multiple different specialities. The first is attorneys, where we have in excess of 4,000 individual attorneys. We currently insure in excess of 1,500 medical practitioners countrywide. And we participate in a number of other areas, such as the business rescue space, where we've done very, very big companies that you'll be familiar with, such as Ster-Kinekor, Group 5, Comair, Edcon, even South African Airways, just to name a few. So professional indemnity is a space that we understand incredibly well. With that said, I'll add just one last thing that differentiates us from other players in the market. And that is that, as Richard said, what Shackleton Risk Management does, personal service is everything to us, and it is key. We have a 010 number where you will have access to both medico-legal as well as in-house attorneys 24/7, 365 days a year. You're not going to be speaking to a call center agent. You're going to get a very, very competent senior staff member of Genoa Underwriting Managers who can attend to any queries, concerns, or questions you may have. And the reason why we've put that in place is because we know how stressful it is to be faced with a claim. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we're here to chat to you guys about today. And we will address some of the more common questions that we see in the medical malpractice space. As Richard's already indicated, please will you either raise a question verbally or alternatively put it into the chat bar on the right-hand side. Rich, that said, do you want to fire off with the first couple of questions?
To some of the questions on the invite. The first one I will deal with is, why do I need MPI as an OT? Historically, medical malpractice claims, I'm talking decades ago, were few and far between. But unfortunately, as it sort of comes with the territory with any country in terms of how it evolves and grows, unfortunately, with the growth and development of any country comes more litigation. And that has been the case in South Africa. And it's been coupled with another concept, which is known as vexatious claimants. You would have seen some on TV advertising their services, where basically there's a bunch of attorneys around who will basically look for patients who have been victim to potential medical malpractice claims. And they will look to tell the patient, look, we could go after the doctor for this case, and if we don't win, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to pay us anything. But if we do, we can share in the payout. So a combination of South Africa becoming more developed as well as vexatious claimants has resulted in more claims within the industry. And the OT space is not something that is different. The claims are, of course, less severe in the OT space, but ultimately, they do exist. Fortunately, because the claims are often not severe, the insurance premiums are quite affordable. So that's just dealing with the first question about, why do I need OT? Simply put, because you can be sued and it does happen. Going on to question number 2, do you need MPI if I'm only part-time in public practice? So for your work done in public practice, the government is vicariously liable for your work done there. So should you have a claim against you for work done in a public hospital, the government is actually the insurance company behind you. Some of you may have seen in the news that the state's outstanding claims for medical malpractice in Gauteng alone is in the billions. Unfortunately, it's often the case that the kind of surrounding medical healthcare within public hospitals is as good and diligent as the private sector, and there can often be claims associated to work done in the public space. However, any work that you perform in the private sector, you are unfortunately exposed to claims that will be brought against you, to which the government will not honor because it was work performed outside of public, i.e. private. So even if you have, say, 5-10% of your time is spent in private practice, you do still need to get insurance for that time. The nice thing about local insurance offerings, such as the one that we offer, is that we don't take a blanket approach and say, well, OTs pay this amount. We do differentiate in terms of apportioning your work and so forth. So to the extent that you're doing any work in the private sector, you definitely do need insurance. Cool. The next question I'll answer before I'll hand over to MJ to answer a few more. What limit do I need and what will it cost? Typically, within the OT space, we would recommend between 2.5 million rand limits up to 10 million rand limits. That limit is a combined limit for the claim that we would have to pay out on your behalf should there be a claim, and also is a combined limit for the defense costs associated with it. So the lawyers that we would have to pay to actually defend the matter and so on and so forth. So it is a combined limit, and it's also an annual limit. So you could have year 1 a claim of 1 million rand and a second claim of 2 million rand. you'd be covered if your limit was let's say 5 million, and then as soon as the next year came, your limit would go back up to 5 million or 10 million, or basically it replenishes every single year. So it's an annual limit, not a lifetime limit, which does replenish. And as I mentioned earlier, the premiums are very affordable in the OT space. Under the scheme that we have via Profnet, 2.5 million rand cover, you can purchase for 70 rand a month, 5 million at 90 rand a month, and 10 million at 130 rand a month. Unlike most insurance options, we do give you the option to pay monthly, which is quite unique. Majority of historical options have been only annual offerings, and obviously for many people they would prefer to pay monthly. I'm going to hand over to MJ to answer the next three.
Thanks. So just speaking a little bit further to the costings that Richard has spoken about, as I'm sure a number of you on the call will know, INSTOPP have approached Genoa and Shackleton along with Profnet and are using the scale of the memberships in order to achieve these very, very competitive premiums. As an example, if an occupational therapist were to approach us independently of INSTOPP, the premiums would probably be as much as three times per month of the figures that Richard has read out to you. So you have the benefit of scale when you are going with an association like INSTOPP, which is obviously in your benefit. And also what the scale does is that there are a large number of bells and whistles that get incorporated into the policy wording, which in layman's terms means that your cover is essentially wider because, again, of the scale that you bring. Okay, so the next question is, do I need MPI for myself, for my practice and my staff, or for everyone? It kind of is an overlap to the question that Richard mentioned to you a little bit earlier about practitioners. First of all, why do I need MPI? And then secondly, do I need MPI if I'm only practicing in private on a limited basis? The short answer is that our view is that you do require PI cover for any occupational therapist that works within your practice. The proviso here is that if you employ someone in your personal capacity and that person is acting under your direct supervision, then your policy, let's use that policy as Bob Jones. Bob Jones's policy can then respond to Mary Sue, who is employed by Bob. In those instances, you would have a single policy that could cover your staff member. Remember, however, that would mean that in the event that Mary were to be negligent, effectively your PI policy could be eroded for those potential claims, and you may very well then not have sufficient cover for yourself for the remainder of the year. But the definition of insured does include an employee. So in that instance, that would be covered under your MPI policy. The next two questions are hell of important. And the first one pertains to a thing called a retroactive date. Now, I know that a lot of you will go like, oh my goodness, it sounds like Greek to me. What on earth is this chap talking about? But a retroactive date is very, very important in your insurance. It's one of the most important things that you need to pay attention to today. So let me give you an example. Sue is an occupational therapist who historically was insured with underwriter or insurer A. She took out that policy in 2010. And now in 2021, she decides that she would like to move across to the Genoa offering. All right. If Sue came across to Genoa in 2021 and did not request that Genoa matches the retroactive date, which would be the date that she incepted the policy with insurer A, in other words, in 2010, then Sue would not be covered for that period. And the reason for that is because these policies are underwritten on a claims-made basis. So it's extremely important that when you change insurers, that retroactive date is pulled across into your new policy. The good news is that for those practitioners that are moving across into Genoa, we automatically match that retroactive date, because were we not to do that, you would be up a creek and you wouldn't have cover for the previous period in which you were practicing. The only thing that we would require as proof in that instance would be that you are able to show us that you have previously held uninterrupted MPI with another insurance company. That's the only requirement that we would put in place for that specific instance. So that's what's called retroactive cover. The next thing that is also incredibly important is what's called run-off cover. So run-off cover is the time after one of these things happens. So either you decide to retire, you die, you cease to practice, or potentially you immigrate. Obviously, if you die, it would be the executor of your estate. But it's very important that a policy offers what's called an extended reporting period or a run-off period. That essentially is the time that you are able to report claims to the insurance company after you stop practicing for one of the reasons that I've just given. In the event that a policy did not include run-off cover or extended reporting period, you may find yourself again up a creek where you've now retired and 6 months later, there's a claim that's lodged against you for someone you saw prior to retirement. The insurance policy could turn around and say, well, you're no longer covered because you've canceled the policy and you've gone into retirement. It's for that reason that Genoa includes, as a minimum, a 60-month extended reporting period. So you have 5 years after retirement, death, physical disability, or ceasing to practice in which to notify Genoa of claims for work done prior to the retirement, death, physical disability, or ceasing to practice, or alternatively immigration. For those practitioners who feel that perhaps the 5 years is not sufficient, we are able to also offer you at a very nominal premium, a year 6, a year 7, a year 8, 9, 10, and for however many years that you require. The only proviso there is that it remains at underwriter's discretion, and that there's an additional premium payment that does come through for that additional cover that you put into play. So I'm just going to pause there for a second and just see whether we've got some questions in the chat. Rich, have we got anything in there? I don't know if you can see.
No, I haven't seen anything so far. I mean, just to kind of make one more commentary on the whole runoff concept. Let's say you were insured from 2020 until 2030, at which point you retire. You've paid your insurance premium every single year, and now you retire 2030, having paid 10 years insurance premiums. The Genoa policy works in a way that you will pay your last premium in 2030, you will stop paying insurance, and Genoa will still insure you for 5 additional years, so up until 2035, free of charge. That's built into your policy. You do not need to pay for that. You don't need to do anything for that. It's just merely a condition and benefit of the policy that built into the premium that you're currently paying is 5 years free cover once you retire, die, become physically disabled, or cease to practice. So that's built in. You're entitled to that irrespective, and that's free. Should you want to get more cover than 5 years, which I wouldn't recommend, because claims prescribed within South Africa, prescribed means become null and void essentially after 3 years. So I wouldn't recommend it. But should you feel strongly about it because you felt you've dealt a lot with minors and something may have gone wrong, we can certainly extend your cover, but I wouldn't recommend it. But it is there available to you.
Perfect. I mentioned a little bit earlier, and please, if anyone has any questions, please do raise them into the chat box, or alternatively hold down your space bar and you'll be able to speak. But I raised a little bit earlier that the policy carries a number of bells and whistles. So some of the ones that I'll touch on just very quickly is you have the option of requesting forensic audit cover. So in the event that a Medical aid, as an example, requests an audit of your ICD-10 coding. The policy will, for a nominal additional premium, respond to assist you with that audit that is being carried out by the likes of Discovery or someone. So the forensic audit cover is a very popular cover that we've noticed across the hundreds and hundreds of practitioners that we insure. The policy, and for the ladies out there, the policy also includes a premium holiday. Now that's a very, very important one in the event that you take maternity leave. So essentially what it means is that whilst being on maternity leave, you no longer pay premium, however, the policy remains in place. If that extension were not included under your MPI policy, then you run the risk of an insurance company essentially canceling the PI policy. And again, you would have a gap in cover, which is a big problem for you in terms of your MPI. It's things like this that Genoa, in association with Shackleton, have thought about very carefully to ensure that you, the practitioner, are adequately covered when you move across into the Genoa space. Another massive distinguishing factor between the offering that Genoa has and the offering that is currently included in the market is that we are one of the few insurers, if not the only one, who allows practitioners to pay on a monthly basis. We know how tough times have been financially, and particularly in the light of the COVID climate that we've currently exited. Monthly premiums were seen as a massive benefit for our practitioners, and we're pleased to confirm that we do offer our MPI on a monthly basis. Other insurers will only offer it on an annual basis, which means that there's a large cash amount that is payable upfront, and a number of practitioners are unable to pick that up. The next question that I'm going to deal with is an area that insurers often brush under the table and no one likes to speak about it. It's almost like the strange uncle that comes around to your Christmas party. The other thing, and this is, as I said, what some people and insurers try and avoid, but this is actually something that's the most important for you, the practitioner. You pay your MPI premiums across your life, and then you're faced with a claim. So I want to assure everyone on this call that the claims process at Genoa is very, very simple. You have one of two ways to do it. You can email us at claims@genoa.co.za with the HPCSA inquiry or the summons or the legal process or the letter of demand or the request for records. You can email us, and that is going to be directed to a lady by the name of Shackleton Smith. She's a qualified med-mal attorney out of Garlick and Bousfield, which is a very successful med-mal law firm. Alternatively, you can call us on our 010 number. I'll put all of these in the chat box as well. And again, you'll have an option to speak to an underwriter, in which case you want to understand something about your policy, for example. Alternatively, you can speak to a medico-legal advisor. So we've got a trained doctor, qualified doctor who sits on our call. It's Dr. Brad Byra, who would be there to assist you with, I don't know, issues around informed consent, for example, or what to do when a patient requests records. Can you decline to see a patient? All of those kind of elements, Brad will be able to assist you with. Alternatively, you press 3 to speak to an attorney, in which case you'll be handed across to one of our in-house attorneys. An insurance company can do a lot of things for you, and we can have a lot of bells and whistles, and we can look great on paper, but the time that we actually come to the party is when you have a claim. And it's for that reason that Genoa has created a very, very robust claim system. We've got an online portal for those of you who are tech savvy who would like to report those claims online. We've got a 010 number that allows you to get 24/7 access to either a medico-legal advisor in the form of Dr. Brad Byra, alternatively to Shackleton Smith, who's our in-house attorney from Garlick and Bousfield. And those medico-legal and attorneys will assist you with anything from helping you write a written response to the HPCSA. They'll help you in what to do with difficult sort of patient queries, like can I refuse a patient, or What happens if a patient doesn't pay me? What are my rights? All those kind of elements are where they will add value to you, the practitioner. And that is an area that we focused a lot of our resources in order to ensure that you, the insured, are completely comfortable and feel that you are in incredibly capable hands. These people are experts in what they do, and I can assure you that you will only have a good journey with them.
I think, MJ, just to add a point on something different, but that's obviously quite relevant at the moment, is telemedicine, which has become increasingly popular throughout the medical community during COVID. To confirm on that regard, telemedicine is included under the Genoa policy, but there is, however, a sub-limit. So the sub-limit for it is 10% of your overall limit. So let's say you have a 5 million rand limit, you would be insured up to 500,000 rand for a telemedicine claim, and everything else would be at the full limit. That's a market-leading offering. No one else is covering telemedicine. So just that you understand, it is there, but at a reduced level.
I think from my side, Rich, I've highlighted the major points that I wanted to raise. So perhaps I can hand back to the floor and see whether anyone at this stage has got any questions for us around the insurance offering that we have. Anything from how the sign-on process works to how long we've been around, I don't know. Richard and I are here, and we've made ourselves available to answer anything that you guys may have.
I think one of the main questions that come to us would be that what's the difference between what you offer specifically versus what MPS offer? Now, traditionally, we've, through our association, we've belonged to MPS for many years, many of us, and now to make the change, it's quite different. So it's almost leaving something that's familiar to taking a leap into something new. And I know what MPS says, they do it on a case-by-case basis, and which is great, but it's also not great. Whereas with you guys, you are quite specific, but I think it would be helpful if you speak to that.
So Hanneke, to talk to that, I think if we just start at the top between MPS and ourselves, what MPS offers is not an insurance offering. So I think that's really important to understand up front, to understand what you're dealing with. It is not an insurance offering. It's a membership whereby you pay money in the hope of being covered for claims. There is no contractual relationship between you and MPS. There is no specified limit which you enjoy. There is no specific policy wording in terms of saying you'll be covered under this instance or not this instance, and you will be covered for telemedicine or not. There's nothing. It's quite comparable to sort of old English club, whereby you pay some money and you can be led into the old bowling green on the lawn somewhere in the UK. That is literally what it's about. So it's not an insurance policy. It's a purely discretionary form of indemnification, whereby if you have a claim brought against you, it is completely at the discretion of MPS to cover the claim. And should they choose to not cover your claim, then you are unfortunately on your own. So it's sort of a bizarre concept where you would never buy a car or house, or you would never do anything which involved money in the world without a contract, without clarity surrounding what's being offered and what you're paying for. But that really is the nature of what MPS does. And because of it, they have, to some extent, lost a huge amount of market share over the last few years in this country, because the product they offer is a lot more expensive. There's no real advice given to practitioners regarding how it works. And they are losing favor quite quickly because of all of it. They do have a decent track record of paying out claims, although there has been a lot of dissatisfaction regarding the process, whereby generally a claim is brought against a practitioner and MPS doesn't involve the practitioner and just settles the claim, which is quite a different approach to the approach that we take, where we actually want to defend the claim and keep you involved in the process from the beginning till the end. MPS is a UK-based company; it's not a South African company. So those are the core differences. It's comparing a membership versus an insurance policy. So that would be my commentary on it. And on top of the fact that they're quite a lot more expensive. I don't know, MJ, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to add a few last points there. To put a bow around what Richard was saying there is that Genoa offers a policy of indemnification. So what that means is in black and white, you can see what we do and do not cover. MPS has a policy of discretion, which Hanneke also pointed out, which is that all matters and claims are discussed, and it is at the discretion of their memorandum of association as to whether they pay. With that said, they are a good company, but you are never clear in terms of what they will and will not have covered. The other issue is that, as Richard mentioned, they're a UK company. So now what that means is that in the event that they were to repudiate a claim and not pay it for some reason, the only recourse that you would have is to go and litigate in the UK. That is how you would have to overturn that matter. That is literally the option that you have available to yourself. In the event that a South African insurance company were to repudiate, the first port of call that you would have would be to report that insurance company to the OSTI. So the Ombudsman of Short-Term Insurance, that's who the OSTI is. And that is the person or representative, the company that will represent you to overturn any decision that an insurance company has potentially made that goes against the issues of phase. Basically, we have to treat customers fairly here in South Africa. And in the event that we don't do that and you are reported to the OSTI, the insurance company can face large fines. And all of what I've just explained to you now is at no cost to you. It's literally an email that you would send to the OSTI who would investigate the matter locally. So that's an important differentiator, I think, between the two products when you're dealing with a South African company. The final element is that because we are a South African VAT registered entity, you can claim back the VAT that you pay on your MPI premium. So you can put it through your company and claim back the VAT. With an MPS policy, you are not able to do that because they're an offshore entity and not a South African registered VAT vendor. So just that is a 15% saving in addition to the already competitive premiums that we do offer. Rich, have I sparked anything else in your mind as I was speaking there?
I think the Ombud and the OSTI really is seriously important. That the Ombudsman is a regulatory body, someone to make the insurance industry within the country accountable, to be regulated. So it's the same as banking. They need to comply in terms of the Banks Act. You need industries to be regulated because it's like the world if there's no police or anything like that, no regulation, that people would do as they please. And that really is a good comparison between the two. Tried and tested and somewhat pleased versus something that's regulated. I mean, you can't. No commercial company, MPS, any insurance company, regardless of who it is there for commercial reasons. Every company needs to pay wages, they need to pay bills. So naturally, there is a bit of a disconnect between clients and companies. That goes for your medical aid, your car, whatever you are paying for in life. And it's important to have regulation behind it to kind of act as a court and a sort of oversight in terms of how people are treated and to protect the public. And I think choosing local insurance companies is more sensible because they are accountable.
Thank you so much for that.
For sure.
There is another question that I had last week. If you have more than one practice, so for example, I have an incorporated company, but I also have work under my own personal capacity as a sole proprietor, how would the MPI work? Would it be for both companies? Would it be an umbrella, or would it actually be a separate? Would I need to pay a fee per practice number.
Hanneke, am I understanding the circumstance where you're saying, like, let's use you as an example, you're an occupational therapist performing work, you've also got an Inc., and maybe the Inc.'s got a couple of branches, and you're saying, do you and the Inc. need to be covered? So the short answer is yes. If you are insured yourself, where you do your work is always covered because you are insured, right? Your Inc., unfortunately, is exposed to liability because it's a separate person. It's a non-living person. It's a juristic person.
Yes.
And ultimately, it is possible, although highly unlikely in the OT environment, for someone to sue you and your company. That can happen. It is much more frequent in, let's say, a company that provides emergency rooms, where you've got a company providing emergency rooms and the sort of support staff and then an emergency room doctor. It's very common for someone to sue the doctor and the company because the company has provided the sort of surrounding support services like nurses and equipment and things. So it's very, very common to have both sued. But within your space, if you have an Inc., it can be sued as well. Although the likelihood of it, I think, is perhaps negligible, but to be safe, you could get both, and we can source both for you.
So I think the principle is, let's say I have a satellite practice in a different rural town, and I only do work in my personal capacity there and not under the Inc. But at the hospitals that we serve, there I do the work under the Inc. So I do work in the two capacities. So what makes logical sense is that we actually need cover for both, because I work under the one practice number here, and there I work under a different practice number. So it does make sense that I need to have cover for both. If I work myself with my own practice number still under the Inc., then one cover would be fine, but if I want to distinguish, then I probably would need to have cover for both.
For sure. And you know, the policy that we're talking about today through Genoa is an individual covered. It will cover you in your personal name, but as a brokerage, Shackleton Risk can source cover for incorporated practices for PTR Limited, so we can get you a separate policy for that. The best way to go about that process is email us on medmail@srisk. I did send a message earlier, and we can start that process and engage with the different insurance company to source that for you, and we can get all the facts and details of that and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and are structuring it correctly.
Awesome. So we do have questions. Do I understand it correctly? If I subscribe to INSTOPP Base Plus membership, that's the one where we actually can access the MPI, and I would like to add 2.5 million MPI cover through Genoa, it will be 275 per month paid to INSTOPP. Yes. So it's additional to the Base Plus membership of 205 Rand. And then there's another question. So I am one of the directors of an incorporated company. We are two directors. Would both directors need to take out the MPI, or do we just need to take out the MPI for the Inc., which also has other OTs employed by us?
So the short answer is that you would, Bronwyn, you would need your own insurance. You know, ultimately, this unfortunately isn't a perfect science. Lawyers will attach, if you see a summons, you'll find everyone and their dog attached to it. You know, so unfortunately, they will try and attach every natural and non-natural persons into any case. So the Inc., yourself, your wife, your husband, they will try and take them all. So my recommendation would take out insurance for both directors. If you were a single director, so it depends. I mean, you need to differentiate between are you a director of a company and you're not performing any medical work whatsoever. You just let's say you're a qualified OT, but you've given up OT and you're a director of a company. That's very different. But to the extent that you practice OT, like you as a human practice OT, you need insurance. So you could be a human practicing OT and also have an Inc. that does OT work, maybe employ people, maybe you don't. Both entities can be sued.
I think the risk is exactly what you are saying, is that everybody in the chain can be sued, and the Consumer Protection Act actually says that everybody in the chain is actually liable. So we need to be mindful of that as well, and rather be overcautious than not cautious at all.
The practice is registered as PTY Limited. Do I cover the practice or myself as a practicing OT? Do I need to cover my administrator? So if you were to get insurance for your PTY Limited and they've got admin people working for it, if you took out a policy for the PTY Limited, it would extend to cover the people employed by the firm. So that policy would cover the staff of that firm and yourself if you're employed by the firm. But as we spoke about before, in the case of you, you might still get attached. But if it's admin people working at the firm, the PTY Limited insurance policy in the name of your PTY Limited would extend to cover the staff working for it.
I would like to know, just in terms of medical scheme reviews, that extra fee that we can pay for that extra cover, what is it that you are covering and what is it that you would exclude?
Okay, great. So it's 100 Rand a month. And essentially what we will do is we'll give you access to a forensic audit opposition cost. So what that means is that when you are audited either by a medical aid and or a third-party administrator, we employ the services of someone to come and physically audit your ICD-10 coding. They've got software that will be able to pick up and identify whether there are any anomalies within your coding. We would then advise you in terms of how to respond to the medical aid scheme or the third-party administrator on your behalf. So basically, we would generate an independent report on your behalf, appoint an expert to make written submissions on your behalf, which validate how and why your ICD-10 coding has been correct and why the medical aid scheme or the third-party administrator is incorrect and has erred in calling upon you for a forensic audit. As you know, those costs can sometimes be quite expensive. The disclaimer to what I'm saying is that if it emerges that the insured has actually acted dishonestly or fraudulently with the intent to benefit from overbilling, then the insurer is entitled to be reimbursed for the amounts that we paid to defend you against that medical aid or third-party forensic audit.
That's exactly what we need, because if I bill correctly and I can justify why I billed what I billed, I still have to defend the case, which incurs some costs. Whereas I think some people might think that it is when there's a clawback on the practice that the policy will cover the clawback, which isn't the case. It's just the defending costs.
Absolutely, yeah, correct.
If you'd like to discuss your current situation and get advice and whatever you need, just pop us a mail and we will gladly.
I think, Richard, that's quite important, that some of the questions are quite complicated and that the way that practices are structured is not that easy to understand just from a quick rundown. So thus, if you have a question that is quite difficult to kind of figure out, please feel free to make contact with Richard and MJ directly, so that you get your questions answered and that you feel rest assured that you are covered and that you are sorted. I just also want to reiterate that we need MPI because it's actually an HPCSA regulation. It's written into the Health Professions Act. So thus, it's not a choice, especially for us that work in independent practice. Obviously, they've rolled out now for government that practitioners also need to have their own insurance, but government themselves, the Department of Health, also has insurance. But if you do work as an independent practitioner, whether it's part-time, whether it's full-time, whether it's 3/4 of the time, you need MPI to cover you in the case of a claim against you. So it's not something that someone decided, it is a regulation in the Health Professions Act. MJ, thank you for sending that information as well to help people connect with you guys. I think also that was what was really valuable for me, is that if I have a client that is difficult or that is challenging something, and I am concerned from an ethical point of view, that I have the free range to email you for advice.
Do reach out to us. That's our team is here to help. We get calls and emails on a daily basis, and that's what we're here to do.
I really appreciate you guys being on the call tonight and answering questions. Have a lovely evening, everybody, and hope to see you soon on the next webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Cheers.
Thanks for the opportunity.